Welcome to the On Track GP podcast right here on DR Sports. This weekend was the Japanese Grand Prix. We're going to dive right into it. Joining me today is Coylin and of course...
Good start.
We'll keep that in it. And of course, Robbie is with us as well.
Good.
Good to have you both. It was a jam-packed weekend. Before we actually get into what happened, I feel like at this point Max is back, and there was a little battle between him and Checo, which we'll go into a little bit further. But is there anybody genuinely that when Max and that car are at full level, you think can possibly compete with him?
Well, I suppose the good thing about it is that, yeah, Red Bull are still ahead, and in particular Max Verstappen. But the one thing is, this year I've noticed a kind of a trend, especially in these opening races, the Ferrari are a lot closer. So, you know, going forward, you'd like to think that maybe it'll close that gap. I know Carlos Sainz talked a little bit after the race yesterday about that he's confident that they can close and compete against Red Bull in some of the races this year at least. But yeah, you know, of course they're still ahead, and they're still ahead by a bit, but it's getting closer. So that's the main thing.
Do you feel like it's a little bit more competitive role? Because I know you said you'd like it if Max had a DNF every week. But is it looking slightly more competitive this year?
Not really, no. Because like you said, when that car's in tune, like, you know, remember the last race, it was, you know, he retired, didn't he? But I think when that car's on song, and especially on those tracks with lots of corners and that, I don't think no one's beating him. Or no one's beating that car. No one's going to beat that Red Bull car. He was pushed a little bit by Checo this week. So that was good for the fact that at least his teammate is pushing him. But once that car's in tune, I just don't see no one getting close to it. I mean, the Ferraris are, you know, they're up there. It's good to see that they're up there. But yeah, it's just going to take... it's a miracle to stop him from winning another championship this year.
Well, it was a double stack for Red Bull. It was, of course, Max and then Checo in number 2. And it was Carlos Sainz in P3. So he's just carrying on what has been a brilliant start. We're going to talk more about Ferrari in a little bit, but we'll open with free practice and kind of the highlights from that. There was a debut for Japanese driver Ayumu Iwasa. He competed in FP1 for the Visa Cash app, or the RB, as we also like to call it. He previously had competed in F1 with Dams in 2022 and 2023. He's competing in Super Formula with Team Mugen. Did you manage to catch a glimpse of him, Coylin, over the weekend?
I didn't catch a glimpse of practice. Unfortunately, I preferred my sleeping hours to get ready for Sunday.
If you were awake for Japan, I mean, I really do commend you.
Yeah, but you know, knowing Ayumu as well out through his career, he's an incredible driver. The job he did with Dams in F2 and F3 or in F2 in last year in 2022 was really good. He did a test with AlphaTauri last year in Abu Dhabi after the session, I think, or after the weekend. I think they were very happy with him. So he's one of those kind of like Lawson, maybe not the same as Lawson, but he's one of those Red Bull drivers that you'd be really looking at for a future seat in F1. I think with time he will get there. He is really talented.
So much good young talent coming through in F1 at the minute, in particular. Just hope we actually get to see them on the biggest stage at some point.
They've got a load of money. They always get a drive.
Yeah, it's true. But there's only 20 cars. It's tough. It's tough pickings. Yeah. Logan Sergeant, he suffered an accident in FP1 as well, turn 7. Williams is still without a spare chassis, by the way. The car, it was just the front and the rear wings that were damaged. But how can a team still not have fixed the chassis issue, which basically led to them having one driver on the grid?
That's weird, especially when you've got a driver like Sargent who's always going to crash cars. And
shots fired.
No, but it's true though. This guy, I mean...
Yeah, they fixed the car and then he trashes it.
He's awful at the moment, isn't he? I mean, he must be paying a lot of money for that drive. You know, I mean, you're speaking about great drivers and that, but come on. I mean, how many more crashes are you going to have?
Well,
you know?
It's the American factor. They want the American driver.
Yeah, I know. Listen, we get it. We you know, you just spoke about the really talented drivers that are out there in F1. What a lot of people may not know is that some of the drivers in F1 are basically, they paid their way into a seat, right? So, or sometimes, like you said, you know, I mean, teams may look on it and look at territories and say, well, there's a big market in that area, so that particular person will get a drive over someone who's maybe better than them, just because of the finance. And I kind of get it, because, you know, to run an F1 car is ridiculous, insane amounts of money to have a car. But You know, Sargent's got to step up.
Yeah.
He's got to step up. I mean, he's had a really poor start to the season, and he can't just keep going on like this. I mean, he's had another atrocious race, hasn't he? So
yeah, it wasn't a good weekend for him, and it wasn't a good weekend for Daniel Ricciardo. He also had an FP2 spin, but he was able to return to the circuit. He continued, and I will just fast forward. We'll miss out qualifying for now. We'll head to the race, and then we'll circle back a little bit. Danny Rick, a red flag. Crash with Alex Albon coming into turn 3, literally as soon as the race started. Big blow, obviously, to both cars. But Danny Rick, I mean, I just don't know how much longer he's going to be in that seat.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, you know, it was one of those accidents, your typical first lap accident where Ricciardo, he had Stroll, I think, on the inside. Ricciardo tried to go around the outside turn 3, which is not where you'd want to be anyway in that corner. But, you know, Albon in his blindside couldn't see him, and just they came together. Nobody's fault really, pure racing accident, but it's definitely not what he needed at this point in time. He needed a good race, but unfortunately that's not the way it went. Yeah,
he's completely out of luck in this race, and like you said, Abby, it's not looking good for him. You know what I mean? He's really got to start getting something at it. Yeah,
well, he had a better qualifying this week.
Yeah,
he did have a better qualifying. So is that something that we're seeing an improvement, or are we just being kind because it's Danny Rick and we want to see him on the in the sport for longer?
Well, the pace is there. It looks like it's coming back, and there was a lot of talk through the team principal at Visa Cash App Orby about saying that our job is to make Daniel comfortable, and this weekend was kind of a little bit shown like, oh well, they're kind of getting there. He's a lot closer to Tsunoda, but you know, I'm a big Ricciardo fan personally, but I was one to call it out last year and say, look, Ricciardo's not the right idea for 24. You need Lawson, you need a young driver in there, you need to keep the young drivers on the grid. I don't have much faith in Ricciardo. It kills me to say it, but this season is going to be the last one for him, I think.
Yeah, I would agree, and that of course also did cause a DNF. He wasn't able to finish the race. Same as Alex Albon. So it was a bad weekend for Williams, and obviously a big dent also for Danny Rick in terms of what he can achieve moving forward. But in terms of that red flag, Max Verstappen from the restart managed to kind of hold off that lead from Sergio Perez. Nico Hülkenberg, he got away, pretty poorly. He also lost positions. Alonso, he held off Piastri on the soft tyres while Lance Stroll made up positions to move to P12. I think from a position where we're always on Sergio Perez's back, for him to be competing again with Max, I know it's maybe just a one-off race, but for him to be there, that's showing signs of confidence, and maybe he is fighting for that seat come next season.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, he's doing exactly the job that Red Bull want him to do. So, you know, he's kind of up there. He's in a position where he's taking P2, but he's not challenging Max, which is exactly where they want him.
Just looking at the times, he was 12.5 seconds off Max, though. So is he really challenging Max, or is he just protecting Max, which is what that's the job they want him to do, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
He said he had a good qualification, didn't he? Like at one stage he was on pole. Right, wasn't he? I think he was
I think he could have been on pole. He was less than a tenth off Max at the end.
Yeah, he took
it's
pole.
Good qualification, but like you said, Max, I said it a few weeks ago on this, Max is the number one. Right? And yeah, if he comes in second in every race, they'll be happy with him. You know, and they'll be happy with that. Big season for him though this year, because it's just wondering, will he still be there next season? But then he is again another one of these drivers that has massive support. The South American, the Mexican support is huge. Is that a factor? And he's still doing okay. So
my only worry for Sergio would be though is will we see a repeat of last year? Like the start of seasons is never Sergio's problem. It's when it's the middle of the season when the big upgrades come in, the upgrades that favour Max. Is that when we're going to see Sergio starting to struggle like last year again? That's where he needs to show he can perform.
We'll have a look at the Ferraris. Carlos Sainz, he mentioned he was struggling on the mediums around lap 8, but it didn't really deter him from the race because he ended up having a brilliant race and being P3. Charles Leclerc, he finished 4th. He had a very strong recovery drive as well. He was on a one-stop strategy. What did you make of the Ferrari strategy this weekend?
Yeah, it was good. I mean, strategy was a big key part of the race, because given the fact that the Japanese Grand Prix was in April as opposed to being in September, October every year, it was a lot hotter, and Suzuka is a very abrasive circuit anyway, as Joe mentioned last week. So it was always going to throw up an issue in terms of tyres for the drivers and for the teams. But yeah, Sainz he struggled like everybody, but he got the job done. He overtook Lando and a few others after his pit stops and got back into the podium positions. Overtook Charles as well. But Charles was impressive for me, because he's one of the only drivers on the grid to actually accomplish a one stop. And he went something like 22 or 23 laps in his initial set of
brilliant in terms of car and time management, isn't it?
Very good. So it was a shame kind of Leclerc didn't finish on the podium, because I think he would have deserved it. But to come from 8th to 4th, given the conditions with the tyres and the circuit, that's a job well done.
And just having a look at the Mercedes this weekend, again, not a particularly good weekend if you're a Lewis Hamilton fan. I mean, P9, George Russell in P7. I mean, Lewis asked his team to change the strategy on lap 21 after starting to seriously struggle on the hard tyres, which they went on after the restart. From a Mercedes perspective, Rob, I feel like we said this last week that, we're just getting a little bit tired now of Lewis just bashing the car, bashing everything about the team, with obviously the view he's going to Ferrari, but he must be able to be getting something better out of the car that he's getting.
When have you ever heard Lewis Hamilton, of all people, allowing his teammate to pass him?
He can overtake
voluntarily.
Yeah.
I mean, that for me just said everything about Lewis this season, in that
there's a lack of fight from Lewis.
He thinks the car's not very good, and he just wants to get through the season and get into that Ferrari. I mean,
you can't blame him, really.
Yeah, but still, you've got to show something. You've been with that team for a long time now. It's your last season. I know the car, obviously, you're not going to win your race, but I don't know. He just looks so off it at the moment. You know what I mean? Look at the positions he's finishing in and qualifying in. He just looks miles off. Russell's beating him in every race as well.
I think it's officially, in terms of the stats, it's officially his worst ever start to a season in Formula One. Even worse than that year in 2009 when they had the terrible start with McLaren. Yeah. Even worse than that.
Yeah, no, he's looking awful at the moment for him. And as I said, that just summed it up on the weekend when you've seen, him again finishing down on the grid. Poor car. It's just you're looking at a shadow of somebody that you're normally used to being so dominant. You're used to seeing so dominant. So I hope when he gets that Ferrari, it's a good car that can we can see the. Because this season we're not seeing.
What I would say is that for me it looks like he's completely thrown the towel in at Mercedes. I mean, that's pretty obvious by his body language.
And I don't like that though. I don't like that because the attitude should still be that I'm going to give my all.
Yeah.
Up until the last day.
Because there's nothing to say that he won't go to Ferrari. Just like when Danny Rick went to McLaren, right? And get in a Ferrari and the car doesn't suit him. There's nothing to say that he's just going to get in and it's going to fit like a glove.
Yeah. Although I do think he's going to get into that car, it's going to be rejuvenated. It's a new team.
Sure.
New adulation from the Ferrari
but
fans.
Also finish on a high with your car.
I'd
finish as high as you can.
Yeah, finish on a high. Just don't, something at the moment don't seem right.
He had a decent qualifying. It was his best position in P7. He was ahead of Charles Leclerc and George Russell. George was in P9. So you've started from a competitive point.
But still, I mean, he was having problems, he said, with the car, but still finished below George.
Yeah.
Again.
Still finished below George. Coylan, talk to me about the McLarens, because Lando was giving it a good go at one point. P5 ended up, but which is still not bad from a McLaren standpoint. But are you just waiting for the upgrades for them at the moment? They don't look as dominant as they did at the end of last season.
Yeah, I think so. I think a couple of teams are in the same position where they're just kind of looking forward to the European leg now and getting upgrades on the car. McLaren, generally okay this weekend. Of course, not in the podium like Australia, and kind of not fighting in the top three, but kind of just business as usual. And I think finishing P5, and I think Oscar was P8 at the end. It's a good result for both of them. It's more points, and they're continuing what's been their best start to a season in in years, which is always a bonus for them. So it's going to be about points on the board for McLaren. And then, like you said, bring the upgrades in and see where they are. Maybe they can pull off something similar to last year.
And Fernando Alonso as well, coming in P6. I mean, the Aston definitely hasn't been what we saw it was at the start of last year, that electrifying pace and someone that, you know, can really compete with kind of that top half. But Alonso is still putting in fantastic drives because he's Fernando Alonso. I feel like we again, this is something else we talk about all the time. Will he sack his son? Will Lawrence Stroll sack his son?
What do you think?
I don't know. I mean, Lance came in P12, and for me, I think if you're going to have a really competitive car, which the Aston can be, you have to have a competitive second driver. I'm not even sure that Alonso will stay past this season. I'm really not.
Would you sack your son?
If I was putting all that money and he wasn't delivering, I'd say come upstairs.
So you paid for the. Literally, you paid for the whole team. You paid for the car, everything like that, right?
Would I sack my son?
You brought your son through all these years, and you know, made him into this F1 driver and stuff like that.
Would I sack my son?
You put a team together so that he can drive in that car. You're not gonna sack him, are you?
Well, let me ask you this in a football term. Okay, you have a son.
Yeah.
He plays football.
Yeah.
Let's say he played for Arsenal. Okay, and he was in a team that could potentially go and, you know, do something really special, you know, win the league or win a trophy or something. But you've got another striker there that's unbelievably good. If you want to be the best team in the country and win the league, you might have to bench your son.
Definitely, me with my son in football, I'm quite harsh. So I'm like, you know, I'll tell you the truth. But I think it's a bit different in this case because he's literally.
I'm telling my son the truth.
It's almost like he's put this thing together for his son.
Yeah, but then there has to come a point.
He's built this for his son to drive.
Though.
So, you know, he's not going to sack off his son.
That's the thing. If you go back through all through Lance Stroll's career, F3 up into F1 with Williams, it was always a case of Lawrence investing in the team, investing in the sport, investing in whatever
for his son.
For Lance, yeah. It's the same with Williams. So
he's built it for him.
But this is a man that in Drive to Survive openly says he wants to win championships. He's never going to win a championship when your second driver is Lance Stroll. It's just never going to happen. I'm sorry. You know, it's just not.
The investment into Williams when Lance came in, that came from his father. When Force India hit problems in halfway through 2018, it was Lawrence Stroll who came in and saved the team. But because he came in and saved the team, they benched Sergio Perez, who was doing a damn good job with the team at the time.
Wild.
And put his son in.
Well,
and,
then
you know, it's just these little. You know,
I love my son.
I really commend
and my son is driving.
I'm happy that he loves his son. That is some lovely parenting.
Can you imagine people in that team?
They must be driving out with Q1 and on some Q3. I mean, that's.
They go to his dad. Can we have a word? Because, you know,
your son is crap. Your son is a crap driver.
Right, the next day they get the P45, you know.
Well, it's true, but I mean, it's just absolutely mental. I mean, at some point you have to compete.
What I said near the start, it's kind of F1 though, isn't it? That you get, because of the money involved, you get situations like that. You get people driving cars that really they shouldn't be. You know, I mean, they're not. All of them are. Listen, to get in that car, you got to be half decent. You got to be super brave to do it. But there's better drivers out there for a lot of these teams. But it's the money. If you ain't got the money sometimes to, you know, bankroll that seat.
Even Schumacher and Lauda back in the day had paid their way into the sport.
If you ain't got the backing. And the good thing about him, he's got the ultimate backing.
Yeah, he's got his dad.
He's his dad. It's his team.
Look, you guys let us know. Would you sack your son? If it meant that you could then be competitive and maybe at some point win a championship, would you keep your son in to know that you'll never win anything?
Because then he's got to go and talk to his wife and tell him why.
There's no friends in business.
You told me that he would be able to drive that car.
We'll quickly talk about Alpine. Esteban Ocon said he was hit by teammate Pierre Gasly on the restart. Honestly, these two, it's just I actually despair at them and what has happened to Alpine. They just need to rip it all up and start again. Yeah,
definitely. I mean, you should have heard Ocon cheering and celebrating just because he got into Q2 Saturday morning. I mean, that just says it all. And for these guys, watching them, they got into a good position kind of just outside the points, both of them at the restart, the second restart, and they just went backwards. Literally went backwards. It was like watching them in reverse. Not trying to sound smart, but that's the way it was with Alpine. And I don't understand how, you know, even to a degree, Mercedes and Ferrari, the money that's put in, the resources, the people, the same with Alpine. Why are you going backwards? Why have you now produced the worst car on the grid? Why is it overweight? Why is it not working?
Yeah.
There's no excuse for it.
No, there's no, and also they've had more investment. They've had all this investment coming from sports stars and NFL stars, and that's the thing. They're going to want to start to see a return on investment. I'm not saying right now, but moving ahead when we get to silly season, I think both of their seats are absolutely up for grabs. I think Alpine need a hell of a lot of development. They need a big name that's going to bring big money in to help them because they've gone so far behind.
I don't know who's going to be attracted to Alpine though when it comes to the end of the season.
Stroll?
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I don't know
Stroll's
what,
new
this
project.
is the thing, money talks, doesn't it? Money
exactly.
talks. But I think if you had on the table Alpine or Williams, it sounds a really weird thing to say, but I think I would rather go to Williams.
Yeah,
I think
100%.
Williams is more competitive as it stands than an Alpine. It's more
got the heritage.
It's got the heritage, and I believe more in the plan that they've got in place with James Vowles than they do at Alpine.
Yeah, definitely.
In my opinion, it wasn't a good weekend, as we said for Logan Sergeant. It wasn't a good weekend for Williams overall. What is the ceiling for Williams this year? Best of the rest?
It's hard to tell because, you know, they were all talking about improvement and moving forward on the grid and trying different things this year, but so far they haven't really seemed to have made much progress. And that's not to say they'll bring an update, you know, whenever they get this chassis issue sorted and bring a big upgrade to the car and it could be flying. They've done it before in the past, but, you know, I don't know. Probably best of the rest. Probably at the moment, their best would be probably aiming for 7th like last year, I think. If they can get higher, well, brilliant, but, I'm not so sure.
It's not good. I'm just having a look at the grid here, and looking at the back of the grid. It wasn't a good. It really wasn't a good weekend, for the kick / stake / Sauber. Zhou Guanyu having a DNF. Valtteri Bottas finishing in P14. Again, that's a car that is just waiting for the Audi takeover. And also having a look, again, as we mentioned, the Alpines 15th and 16th, just terrible. But it was a decent weekend for the Haas. I mean, they just missed out of the points with Nico Hülkenberg. He finished P11, Magnussen in P13. But Haas, I think, have definitely improved. I mean, we've been... I've liked their driving style. I know the rest of the grid don't. Maybe it's a little bit on the dangerous side, but you know, you have to do what you have to do to get some points on the board, and it's a shame for them they missed out.
Yeah, well, it's not the first time that the teams have resorted to questionable
Dark
tactics
arts.
during the Grand Prix. So yeah, I'm all for it. And I mean, I don't think necessarily Haas have improved per se, but they fixed the problem with their tyre issues and everything. You know, the tyres burning off really quickly, and now that that's not so much of a problem, they can actually fight for points, which is great.
Yeah, which is what you want to see. Obviously, they've had big changes as well, but it looks like it's working out for the better for them. And Yuki Tsunoda on his home race, he managed to just sneak into the points. Getting just one on the board in P10. But it was Max and it was the Red Bulls that obviously were dominant. We're going to just move ahead to China. We're staying with these crazy wake-up times for all of us here in the UK. I can't wait till we get to Europe, selfishly. What can we expect from China?
China's going to be a good race, I think. You know, it's the first time in 5 years that they've been there. Of course, all new cars since then, all new new drivers on the grid. And of course, the thing is as well, you're going straight into a sprint weekend for the first time this year, which means you're only going to have one practice session on the circuit you haven't raced on in 5 years. So I'm hoping that'll probably won't be enough to usurp Red Bull, but it'll be enough to kind of throw up some surprises further down.
What kind of circuit is China?
It's quite a fast circuit. As you know, there's it's unique with the really tight turn one, the way it gets tighter and tighter, kind of winds in on itself. It's really cool. But then on, you know, you've got the fast. I think it's turn 7 and 8. It's like an S bend, like Suzuka pretty much, and then you've got a really, really long straight down the back.
So that's going to be great for quite a few.
Yeah, DRS and everything's going to be looking to favour those with the high speed. Yeah.
Who are you favouring them for this weekend? Obviously the Red Bulls.
The Red Bulls. I don't know. I think it's a track again that we might see some good performances from Ferrari though. You know, Ferrari might push them close.
They're always good with the high speed.
Yeah,
Ferrari,
any sort of high speed track's always good for Ferrari. So maybe they can give them a serious run this weekend. But you know, every race at the moment you can't think past that Red Bull, can you?
No, you can't. Coiling, anyone in particular you're looking at? McLaren's maybe? Mercedes maybe?
McLaren aren't, from what I've heard, aren't particularly favourable for China. They're calling it damage limitations, so they're not expecting to go too well. Mercedes, I don't know. I mean, I would have thought with their revised concept and everything that they would have been up in the top 3, and that hasn't happened yet. So I'd have to say Red Bull, but like Robbie said, Ferrari I think, particularly Sainz with the way he's going is always going to be a challenge.
Yeah, he's having a great season so far. And of course, obviously, he would be higher in terms of the points if it wasn't for, obviously, that one race where the points went to Ollie Behrman. Give me your top 3 for the weekend then.
That's tricky with the sprint and everything. I'd probably say Verstappen, Sainz second, Perez third.
Nice. And for the sprint, are you also going to Red Bull?
Yeah, I'd probably say Verstappen as well for the sprint.
Rob?
Let me mix up a bit. Let me go Verstappen first, Sainz second, Leclerc first.
I quite like that.
2-3 from Ferrari. That's interesting.
Two, yeah.
I'm gonna go. I really can't bet against Max. Part of me wants to, but I won't. So I'm gonna go Max P1. I'm gonna go Leclerc P2 and Sainz P3. Don't ask me why. I'm just mixing it up.
Only one favour in Checo here.
Mixing it all up for you. Next week, of course, there is no race, so we will have a little bit of a deeper dive into what we can expect from that Chinese Grand Prix. But of course, we will have to wait another couple of weeks until we're back on the grid as we get closer to moving towards the European races. Yay! Please make sure you do like and subscribe right here on DR Sports and keep up to date with us on Track GP. Thank you.